Ladies and gentlemen, your sweet Zionist Prince Tala Traveling Class coming to you live from Iran. We're taking a look from an Israeli expert at a clip about Iran.
Iran is ancient Persia. For all those people say, they're a very old culture. You bet they are, 4,000 years. But they're not Arabs, they're Persians, right? Persia. Even today, Iranians call themselves Persians. They speak Farsi, the language of the Persians. And for thousands of years, their religion was Zoroastrianism, a kind of fire religion, monotheism, very interesting, totally persecuted today Zoroastrians by the Iranian regime, and they flee to places like America. Now, in ancient days, that Iran, Persia, was either the best of friend of Israel or the worst of enemy. Like in modern times, under the Shah, best of friends, under the Ayatollahs, worst enemies. In fact, the great Iranian king, Cyrus the Great, is the only non-Israelite, non-Jew, who is called in the Hebrew Bible a Messiah, an anointed one. In the book of Isaiah 45:1, why would the Jewish Bible call a Persian a Messiah? Because he passed an edict allowing the Jews that had been exiled into Babylon by the evil Babylonian kingdom to go back to Zion, back to Jerusalem. What? Yeah, the original Zionism, one can say, was a Persian invention of Cyrus. He said Jews belong in Judea. Jerusalem is their capital, and I, Cyrus, the Persian emperor, will facilitate this. Amazing. Unlike today's people say, they don't belong here, we should nuke them. Cyrus said they belong in Israel, and I'll help them. But there are evil moments in Jewish-Persian relationship. For example, Purim story. The Purim story, people know a kind of Jewish Halloween. Everybody gets dressed up, puts on masks, plays games. What is it celebrating? It's celebrating a near genocide. There was a king in Persia, Ahasuerus. Scholars think that he's Xerxes, you know, the guy from 300, if you've seen the film. In that movie, he gets his butt beat by the Greeks. But in any case, there's this king, and he's kind of a muddlehead. And he has this real hot, beautiful, she wins a beauty contest in the story, wife, Esther. He doesn't know that she's a Jew. But he also has an advisor, evil, and that guy's name is Haman. Sure sounds like Khamenei, the leader in Iran at this very moment. And this Haman has a brilliant new idea. Let's destroy all the Jews, every last baby. Let's perpetrate a genocide, a Holocaust against them. Let's kill them all. And then the king says, good idea. And that's when his beautiful wife Esther comes out of the closet and says, Diripu, I'm a Jew. Do you want to kill me? Oh no, says the king. And then he turns around, he's a bit muddlehead. Anyway, now he's on the side of the Jews, and he hangs Haman, and the Jews are saved, and the Persians become the best friend of the Jewish people. And so it goes. Sometimes terrible enemies, sometimes great friends. And then the Muslims conquer Persia, convert the Zoroastrians, most of them, not all of them, to Islam. But here's the interesting thing. After Muhammad dies, shortly thereafter, most Muslims, 90%, go that way with succession, but the Iranians go that way. What do I mean? They follow Ali, the son-in-law and cousin of Muhammad. And when the other guys, the other Muslims, murder Ali's son Hussein at a place called Karbala, whoa, split-a-roo. And that split-a-roo lasts to this day. To this day, Sunnis hate Shiite. Shiite hate Sunnis. Arabs hate Persians. Persians hate Arabs. In modern times, in the 1980s, from 1980 to 1988, there's a war in the Middle East. Not with Israel. It's Iraq versus Iran. The Sunnis versus the Shiite. The Arab versus the Persians. What is it about? They just hate each other. They fight a war for 8 years, not 1 inch of ground that goes this way or that way, but 1 million people die. I don't remember any demonstrations, any PC people, doing all that virtue signaling to save the 1 million people. Nobody was on the campus of Columbia and Harvard going, stop the war now. No, nobody. 1 million people. In fact, the Iraqis created minefields. The Iranians didn't have ways to identify and clear the mines. So they came up with a brilliant idea of using their own children to walk across minefields and clear them by dying and exploding. But not to think that they're bad people. They gave them little plastic keys that they hung around their neck, and these were keys to heaven. And tens of thousands of Iranian children walked and died on these minefields. This is what the Iranian regime, the Shia regime, the Ayatollahs, this is what they do to their children. Can you imagine what they would do to anyone else's children? This is what they did when they were fighting Muslims. Can you imagine what they would do if they ever fought Christians or Jews? So in 1978, these Shiite theologians called the Ayatollahs take over Persia, a country with thousands of years of Persian history and culture. They take them over. And they've been ruling a totalitarian state that executes about 1,000 people a year. Where are all the demonstrations? 1,000 people a year they execute in their prisons, or they hang them in public squares. For what? For being gay? Really? For drug abuse? For not wearing their headscarves properly? This is who's hijacked the Persian history, the Persian people. And what do they do in the rest of the world? They fund every evil group in the world. It doesn't matter to them. Are they communist? Are they Islamic? They don't care. If they kill, they're good. They funded Hezbollah. Hezbollah in Beirut in 1983 murdered 240 plus Marines, American Marines. They have sponsored through proxies. They're very clever. All kinds of murder all over the world. They fund the Houthis, who fight the Arab Saudis, the Sunnis. They don't care. They funded Hezbollah to blow up a Jewish community center in South America, in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. Why would they do that? What did those people do to them? Are they colonialists? No, they're doing they're doing, the arts and crafts. They're doing arts and crafts in Buenos Aires, making little menorahs for Hanukkah, and they blew them up. Almost 100 people died, and many more were wounded. This is the people that want to have in their hands nuclear weapons. And the whole world says, the whole civilized world says, they really shouldn't have nuclear weapons. What will happen is Khamenei will end up like Haman. And one day in the future, the Jews will have a party, just like Purim, and they will celebrate the day that Khamenei went down, and the modern Iranians couldn't do what old Haman wanted to do a long time. Persia will become great again by getting rid of its ayatollahs.
Khamenei, Haman, it's actually pretty interesting. But yeah, like history tends, they always say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And in this case, we really have, we're in this system where before we had an Iran that really loved us. I don't know how many times I've said this on camera, said it many times, maybe some of you guys are new. My grandparents from Iraq were saved by Iran. Before the Ayatollahs, when Iran and Israel had a very good relationship, when my grandparents had to flee Iraq because of anti-Semitism, Iran was the country that facilitated their flights from the Middle East to Israel, from Iran to Israel, from Iraq to Israel. They made it to Tehran and they flew them there for free. They helped them. So it's very crazy, and hopefully we still see, even with everything that's going on, the fall of this regime and peace to come between Israel and Iran. Inshallah. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you a long time. Goodbye, Klats.